came about that you became manager of Kilglass Gaels?
I was thinking about finishing up playing football myself at the time, and Dermot Washington asked me. I would have taught Dermot in St Mel's College, and he rang me up and asked me would I consider training Kilglass. And I talked to my dad about it at the time, and he said, well, sure, it's a new opportunity. I was having a lot of problems myself with hamstring injuries and so on the previous year, so the opportunity came up and I decided I'd jump to it. So that's how it came about.
Okay, and so your first impressions then, you came to Kilglass, what were your first impressions of meeting the group, etc.?
Well, I don't know, was I ever in Kilglass before? It was a long way away from my home house up in South Roscommon. That was I remember it was a wet evening, I think, when I first met the group. I would have met them in the national school, the old national school there, and I had no real expectations. It was my first foray into club management, so we had a meeting. It was very positive, and we took it from there. So I remember one of the first things I asked the group was what do they want to achieve. We tried to sort of identify exactly what they wanted to achieve, and they had all sorts of things listed down. But when we came to the final nub of the issue, I said, lads, really, what do you want to achieve? And they said they wanted to win the intermediate championship in 1999. So we wrote it down on a piece of paper, intermediate champions 1999 Kilglass Gaels, and they all had a look at it, and I said, right, we'll put that away. And the next time we took that out was in the dressing room after we won the championship in Ballinameen that summer.
To rapturous roars of approval.
Absolutely.
Okay, so early days then, what do you remember about training sessions, getting lads out, what were commitments levels like, etc.?
Initially, I don't think it was hard enough to get everyone out. We started quite early, I think. In fact, we started in the gym in Newtown Forbes. I think that's where we started. We did indoor sessions there for a while, and then we moved on to the pitch. We were out on the pitch early January, I think, or maybe end of January, and we were in the old pitch in Kilglass there, and as all of the lads would attest, it wasn't great in the middle of January, and there were evenings we couldn't go out on the pitch. We had to go to the little piece of, I suppose you could call it, waste ground at the back of the dressing rooms there, and we had to train on it, and it wasn't easy. The lads themselves, slowly but surely, they trickled back, the more senior players, but it was hard enough at the start to get everyone to get buy-in from everyone, but eventually they all started to come, and we got on the road.
Now, was there anyone in particular, that has the job getting out of Cox's or somewhere like that?
Well,
I think it's okay to say at this stage.
Yeah. Well, I suppose everybody knows Joey Casey was probably the last man to join the team. I didn't know Joey, but Joey rocked up one evening, and I was wondering who's this fellow with the bag in the back and the big smile which comes with Joey every time you see him. And Joey was one of these lads whom you had to be after. I suppose another lad was Pádraig Nugent. He liked the fireside, especially on a wet night. And but Pádraig was a great lad, but sometimes he didn't. He liked to particularly on those cold winter nights. He would have preferred maybe to be on a bar stool or at the fireside at home.
Hard to blame him in ways, isn't it? Okay, so we were up and running, we're training, league starts then, Do you have any memories of the league campaign?
I have very little memories of the league campaign. I remember, I think we were up in Ballyforden, maybe the first round of the league. I remember one particular incident, alright. We had the team out and they were playing away, and Dermot Washington, he wasn't playing very well, and I said to Parks, look, he's not playing great, we'll take him off. And Parks looked at me, he says, we can't take off Dermot. Dermot was one of our best players, but at the time he wasn't playing well, and I said, look, I have a philosophy, if you're not playing well, you get substituted. Probably a bit harsh. You yourself, Tommy, was at the end of that one too at one stage in the championship, but we took off Dermot at half time, and I don't think Dermot was too pleased, and I think I mightn't have seen him for a couple of training sessions afterwards, but he came back, and when he did come back, he at the end of the year he was the player of the year. So I think that was something that I was very happy about.
And you mentioned Parks there, so you had Parks and Charlie and Peter as your right hand.
Yeah, well, Peter and Parks were Charlie was the chairman, and Parks and Peter were were two selectors. Two very good men. Parks, had been around for a long time in football. In fact, Parks was around when I was an under-16 player with Roscommon. So Park had a lot of wisdom, and Peter was a couple of years older than me. Again, a great lad, knew his football, and we got on very, very well. I don't think we ever had a cross word between us or any dispute. We really gelled very well together, and I think we made a very good team.
Absolutely, okay. And championship then kicks around again. If you have memories of first round, second, quarter-final, semi-final.
Yeah. Again, the memories are fading at this stage. But the first round was against Joseph's. I think we won it well enough in the end. Then we came into play. Follies was next. They were a challenge, of course, because Follies are always a big club. They were always up and down out of senior, and so we got by them in the end. I think we had a very good start on them at the start of that game, and we got a good lead up, but they came back at us, but we got through that. And then we went on to Dominic's again. Dominic's another team from up my own country. They would probably have been favourites to win it. So I don't think at any stage we were favourites to win any of the games. But we had trained hard. We were very fit. And in the end, when we got to the final, I think we deserved it. But as regards score lines, I can't remember now at this stage what the score lines were. But I have all the clippings in the newspapers, clippings which I was showing to you there a while ago. Of course, the final then was in Ballymean.
Okay, well, you brought us on to the final then, so tell us your memories of that day for as much as you can.
Well, funnily enough, it was in Ballymean, which was probably an unusual ground to have an intermediate final, and it was an awful day. It was a wet, windy day. I don't think we would have been favourites to win it, even though we had come through a tough enough group. We were playing against the gale force wind in the first half, and reading back on the clippings there, I remember saying we had 5 attacks and we scored 4 times, and I think we went in ahead at half time, and I think they may have missed maybe 15 or 16 wides in the first half against us. It was a dogged affair. Great crowd from Ruski there. Great atmosphere, but it was at half time. It was great to go in ahead, right? And then in the second half, they came back. They came back hard against us. I think they drew level with us. They went ahead, and then just after they going ahead, we got a point again. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Dermot. I can't remember who scored the point, but we went ahead, and then of course towards the end of the game, we got a goal. Jim Ty scored a goal, and I always remember Jim telling me afterwards. I remember bearing down on goal, and the only thing I heard in my head was you saying low and hard, and he says I was nearly afraid to kick it any other way, because I think he may have hit the bar on a couple of occasions earlier in the year. So he kept it low and hard, and that goal was really the one that set us on. And then he got a goal towards the end of the game again, so maybe 2-2 he scored on that day, which really was what we needed, from a very great player like Jim. And of course Jim played with me as an under 16 with Roscommon, so would have known Jim. So it was a great day.
The Mooch, a character.
Yes, a real character. Yeah.
And just going back before that game, so in the build up to that game, it was a big deal for Kilglass. Obviously, they hadn't been there before. So how did you keep fellas' heads in the game, or sort of tuned in that they didn't let the occasion get to them and they didn't let it pass them by?
I always remember before all our games, we always met in the national school. We always met in the national school and had a meeting. Maybe I think it was the night before each of the big games, and we decided how what we were going to do, how we were going to do it. And in terms of players, I always believe that the best way of getting it is for the players themselves to decide what we needed to do and how we can improve. So each game we look at, each of the previous games we looked at what we did well, first of all, from the positive point of view. What did we do good, and then how can we improve? And every game we tried to build on that. And we had no prima donnas on the team. I think we made sure that from you were picked on merit, and if you weren't playing well, but then you didn't start, and that was the incentive to drive on for the next day. And and I think everybody bought into that concept that this is a team, it's not individuals. And I think as we trained and got through the year, and as we went from game to game, our confidence grew, our teamwork grew, and we knew we were in this together. So before the final, I wasn't particularly worried myself, and maybe that transmitted into the team. At the end of the day, it's a game of football. We went out to enjoy it and do our best. We trained hard, and we had the work done.
Absolutely. So tell me what you remember then about the winning final whistle goes, the outpouring of emotion, just those hours and even days afterwards. What do you remember about all that?
I remember, being relieved at the end of it. It was you're building up to it, and then when you get through it at the end, it's a great sense of relief and a great sense of happiness. My own father and mother was there. My wife was there at the match as well. It was a great sense of relief. And then there was great, celebrations. I mean, I think it was the first time Kilglass ever won an intermediate championship, and of course, anytime you do anything for the first time as a unit, it's great. It builds a great sense of community, and there's a great community in Kilglass. And as a result, I thought, I just felt great joy and emotion. And I remember coming back. I remember one of the lads that wanted to travel with me back in the car. I think it was Niall Kilcran. Niall was in the car on the front seat on the way back. He wanted to travel with me back to Rooski, and of course Niall is a great clubman now. So it was great to see the young lads coming through, and the young people, and all the young people at that match that day, you know, they all came through, and it was a great moment for them as well. But the fact that it's built to, you know, the club went from strength to strength afterwards, you know, in terms of the facilities you have now compared to then. I mean, I think it probably was the catalyst to drive the club on, you know. So I was at the time it was just a sense of happiness and joy.
And you mentioned earlier about the sheet that you had written the goal on earlier
Yes.
in the year, so that was reproduced. So just tell me what happened there.
Yeah, I remember it was produced in the dressing room. I brought it into the dressing room afterwards, and I said, well, lads, this is what you set out to do, and this is what you have done. And when you set out to achieve something, and you do actually achieve it, you know, there's a great sense of you know, you have done what you've done. You set out to do. You know, it doesn't always work out like that. And I remember the person that did that, the very same thing, was the late John O'Mahony. And John was a good friend of mine for many years there. He did the very same thing with us in '97 when I was playing with St. Bridget's. You know, and that's where I would have got that sort of idea from, because you know, you have the goal there in the distance, and this is what you're doing it for. And I don't know where that sheet of paper ever went to.
Sure.
I'm sure I don't know where it's gone to, but you know, I remember handing it over that day to somebody, whoever has it, I don't know.
It should be in the GA museum.
Yeah, and I remember we dated it as well.
Yeah, that's right.
But, you know, we dated it. We said whatever date was on that evening, that meeting that evening.
And do you remember going back to Ruski? I'm sure there's lots of claps on the back for you in particular.
Ah, yeah. Look, sure. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people clapping you on the back, but sure, it's a team effort. Like, you know, I mean, you know, no one individual makes these things happen. It's a complete collective. You know. You know, there's Parks, you know, the Wise Parks was there, and Peter, you know, was his nuggets of wisdom. You know, we were the three that sort of tried to bring it all together and you know, have a team spirit and a team bond. But at the end of the day, you know, it's the individual in the field that have to do it. You know, you just try and create the conditions that they're comfortable in doing it, and that's what we try to do. You know.
Well, you did it very well. So, thinking of the squad back then, who would you say was the best trainer that you had on that squad?
There's a couple of. I have the program here from the day. You know, there was some great lads there to train. You know, Tommy Dehan was a great lad to train. Dermot Washington, you know, all of them. Tommy Washington, always good to train. Vinnie Murphy was a great lad. You know, Sean Davis and Gaels, he was young, very young fella. Thomas Stifley, Trevor McDonough. The vast majority of them were good lads to train. And then, you know, I mentioned Joey and Porrick, you know, and there as two lads that, you know, from time to time I had to go after, but there were two great lads, two midfielders, you know, and when the chips were down, them boys stood up, you know, and led from the front, you know, on the days that we needed them to lead. And you know, that's what you need. You're not going to get a uniformity in characters across any team, you know, and you know, but you know, in the heel of the hunt, when the summer months came around, there was nobody, generally speaking, you know, dodging, ducking, or diving. They were all on the same hymn sheet, and they all wanted to win, and you know, thankfully they all did.
Well, while you're on that, you can be honest now, we're looking for honesty, who would be the worst trainer? Who would be the lad to take the shortcut around the flag every time?
Jim Ty.
No surprise there.
Yeah. Jim Ty.
Okay.
Jim's a great lad though. He shone when we needed him to shine.
He certainly did. Okay, well, look, Jimmy, you've managed a lot of teams over your years since you stopped playing yourself. So where does that year in particular with Kilglass rank among the great times you've had?
Without question, it was the top. It was the best. You know, it was my first. It was because I'd been to Croke Park. You know, with the minor team afterwards in Longford, and with Roscommon under 21 teams have been, a small bit of success with them too. But without question, it was the best because it was a sense of camaraderie within the parish and the sense of achievement, because the expectation was never there to probably win, and and we put a huge effort together, and because I suppose it was my first as well with any team, it was a great, and then the great people that was with me, Peter and Parks and Charlie and all the lads. So I'll never forget it. It was a pivotal moment in my life as well, just as it was in their lives. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and will obviously never forget it.
We'll finish off on this. You had a saying, if you remember it, you say, if it has to be me, it has to be me. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So where did that come from?
That was O'Mahony again, another famous one of his was, well, if you think you're injured, you are,
Yeah.
He was a great believer, that individual responsibility on the field, you had to take it, you can't be leaving it to others. And I think on that, actually, in all of the games, the championship games, what really I was very proud of, different players stood up at different times, and and it wasn't always the same players. Like I remember, I think it was in the quarter final, maybe Porrick Nugent had a great game against Follies. Dermot had a great game in one of the games. I can't remember which it was, but he was brilliant throughout. But right through, Tommy Deanahan as well. Was different lads stood up, and then of course Jim stood up in the end. And we all knew that Jim had serious talent, but when the chips were down, we needed somebody to stand up, and he stood up and got 2-2, I think, on the day. So that was, so it was great to see that, and it shows that, that's what a team is. You need different lads standing up on different days and not expecting somebody else to do it for you, and I was very proud about that.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks.